2020, the investment management exhibition. Thanks to Bekim Jaffa for the invitation. I enjoyed it very much, and I will now make my presentation and put that on YouTube as well in order to keep it for all the participants, but also for my YouTube channel. It was about foreign direct investment, how to attract foreign direct investment, what is the key to really be a successful country with a lot of investment, because basically if you have foreign direct investment, obviously it's also good for your domestic investors, and there is a mutual beneficial atmosphere in the optimum case between foreign direct investment and small and medium enterprises. So I'm very much in favor of foreign direct investment. And my small introduction speech at the event was about Central Europe to Central Asia, currency, customs, corruption, trade, tax rates and transparency on behalf of CEBC, the Central European Business Council. It was very nice, and I will start now with the small presentation. What are the key factors for a very good, successful economic framework for attracting foreign direct investment? The first factor is to have a stable currency. A stable currency like the euro. Obviously, the euro cannot be in all countries of the world, and that is not the plan. But there's the dollar, the euro, or other stable currencies, and it's very important for foreign direct investments. The currency risk is a disaster, and it's an absolutely no-go for many projects. When you have this kind of traditional currency policy, competing downwards with other countries to stay competitive, even when you are very integrated in a big market, that's an absolute disaster for the foreign investor. You imagine you bring $1 million into a country, 30% decline, it's gone, the 30% of this money, and that you have so great competitiveness afterwards that this really is, you can earn that again. It's very doubtful, to say the least. Yeah. And when you also bring funding with you, you have to repay then in hard currency in your own country in euro or dollar, and then your investment in, let's say, Romania or anywhere else in Ukraine is losing money. This is really like a graveyard for foreign direct investments. And really, so I very much advocate for countries to have a currency peg to the euro, to the dollar, depends on your trade pattern, where you integrate it, or to other big currencies if you are very highly trade integrated. Obviously, if you're a very big economy, you have a big internal market above 50 million, then maybe that's a different situation. But for all the fragile, small periphery areas below 50 million consumers and also poor and a little bit, in a geostrategic crisis zone, then definitely go for a currency peg to the dollar or the euro, and depending on your trade pattern. With that, I mean how intensively you are integrated in the market of that region. That's very important. What I mean with the European trading system, that's very important. That's the second thing, that you have a stable anchor system. As a small peripheral nation, you need to have a strong anchor system of a regulatory system. In the world there are not so many regulatory trade systems. The American, the ex-Soviet, now Russian one, maybe the Chinese one, and the European one. And that's about it, yeah. Tell me what other fantastic trading systems and regulatory systems and normative systems there are in the world. I would really like to learn, and give me feedback on that one. But there is basically this 3, 4, maybe 5 different systems, and it's about technical normation, standardization of products, norms for about everything. That's really very difficult to duplicate. And it's very important to stay into one of the systems, and then to be recognized with your product standards, with your market access systems. And we have in the EU itself, it's a customs union. In the customs union we have also partners, the European Economic Area, the European Free Trade Area. Then we have also CEFTA for the Eastern Europeans and the Balkans. And we have the DCFTA agreements with Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and some other partners. And we have this global trade network, which we have now expanded with Canada and with the Andean South Americans, with much of Africa, and I will go into details of that one where we stand in a second slide. But this is really very important. You have to make a decision on that one. You have to adopt and build a free trade system and a regulatory system which is valid and which is working. The other thing is, the tax rates matter very much. Yeah? There is a big debate, when you have a good legal system, then the tax rate don't matter. That's absolutely wrong. Because in any kind of investment, you assume that there will be no economic and legal problems. You can, very difficult to put political risk in a business plan. Yeah, very difficult to put potential legal problems into a business plan. That shakes all the fundament of calculation. So what you normally do is, make a real business plan about the economic factors of your business, and the taxes make a huge impact on that one. The interest rates, obviously, if you have to finance it, but also the tax rates. That's the cost of the government in a country, how much you have to give from your business plan towards the public resources, and it makes a huge, huge impact on your punchline, on your business plan. So it really matters. And when you look at the rates now with the US having done this big tax cut with 21, and also most of European countries have around 20%, the richer ones, some unfortunately still at 25, some at 30, like the French and the Germans, we will discuss that all. But all the Eastern Europeans who have come up now in the last years, and this is the focus of my organization, it's the Balkans and Eastern Partnership and Central Asia, they mostly have gone really downwards with the tax rates, and that is of course necessary when you want to compete. And this is my recommendation as well. If you're a transition country, rather poor, you have to go for 10% corporation tax. Same as well, very much important for the income tax, because that really depends on the informality level. Do you have to pay your employees in cash or in the bank account? That makes a huge impact on the whole level of the formality, of the compliance level, on the bookkeeping. It's really a tremendous important thing. And the 10% flat tax is definitely the best system. And as you see, most of the countries in Central and Eastern Europe have already a similar system. Azerbaijan not, Armenia not. There is obviously always the countries which have a more socialist tradition. But Romania 10%, very good. And also Montenegro 9%, Bosnia 10%. This is the right level for transition countries, and I'm very happy about recommending that. Yeah. The next factor obviously is always about corruption. That's a big topic, that's a fear, that's a no-go, no-go, no-go for all the international investors in the last 15 years. Before it was different, but compliance and regulatory pressure in the OECD countries has been increased so much that this is really a big, big issue. And that's also one of the reasons why we have less foreign direct investment in the developing world. Because, you as an executive board member of a stock exchange listed company in Western Europe or in the EU or in the US or any OECD country, you really have to be extremely careful with this. And you don't want that, yeah? And you don't do that anymore. And so the situation is that we have the big progress of Georgia. This is really to be applauded and always held as the lightning star of the European reform movement, being 44, much better than several of the European Union countries, to our big shame. Yeah? It shouldn't be the case, actually. Yeah? We should be better than that. And there must be a big discussion in the European Union exactly why we have Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia worse than Georgia, and learn from Georgia would be very good, because we can do it better as well. We have Estonia and we have Slovenia and we have Lithuania, and we have really good results. We see that Montenegro is the best in the Balkans with 66. Contrary to what many people say, it has made a really significant progress. And Serbia, you see at 91. Yeah, so really, that are the facts. Yeah? We should always stick to the facts when it comes to evaluating the countries. This is a very important point, and I recommend to study the Georgian example. Then my favorite topic, I think it's always so important to discuss about land, because everything a foreign direct investor does is connected with land. You either buy it or you rent it. You need retail, you need production facilities, logistic facilities. You need anything you do is connected with the land access. It's rarely that foreign direct investors have inherited the land, yeah, from the family. Yeah? No, they are going to rent it or to buy it. They need it for manufacturing, logistic, and everything. And it's very important that it's transparent. Yeah? And the Macedonian land cadastre is the best in the world. It's quite impressive what a poor country can do with modern blockchain technology to really have a mortgageable future apartment which the bank accepts as a number from the moment of the construction permit already in the cadastre available online to see who will be the buyer and which bank is mortgaging it. Yeah? I mean, this is a level of sophistication which I really love. You have every single owner transparently online. This is cool. Yeah? Now they have started for payment, as a part of, to recover some of the costs. I was not in favor of that. I'm thinking that's really very good to keep it for free and to keep it as transparent as possible. This is really good, and I recommend everybody to go for digital construction permit and the online transparency, seeing who owns the plot, who has mortgaged the plot at which bank. It's such a perfect tool against corruption at the local level, at giving out the construction permit, which is one of the biggest drivers of corruption on the local level, but also to see where the money is hidden, because that's obviously all this nouveau rich elites. They want to hide their illegally obtained wealth into the property, and this is the way you can really make transparency. So these are, I think, the fundamentals. Land access, fight against corruption, and also low taxation, trading system and currency. And at IME we had then a very good panel that was really, I would like to thank very much for this invitation and the opportunity to discuss about the latest trends in FDI, what is currently happening and what are the big drivers of change in the FDI sector. And obviously I focused on the WTO accession and the trade conflict with China, and the tax cuts in the US in 2017, the Russian aggression since 2014 and all the consequences, and obviously the corona crisis, we're in the middle of it. And what we actually have to do about it, I will discuss in this presentation. So first of all, let me celebrate China's WTO accession. It's very important, 2001, 11th of November, China was invited to join the WTO. And it was really great because we want the Chinese to be rich as well. It's not about excluding anybody. We want everybody to be rich, yeah, and compete and contribute and be innovative and do something. But it's, of course, quite a big change for the global economy. Huh? It was, let's digest these numbers. It's China in 2001, when it joined, was 1.3 trillion GDP output. I mean, 1.3. And now it's 14.3, yeah? I mean, that's a fantastic sign that the WTO really works, and it's another 14 trillion GDP output for the world, yeah? A wonderful expansion. But obviously, there's a huge change in the global economy, yeah? And you need some adjustment. And obviously, also China has been integrated as a poor development country with a lot of exemptions. And now it is time to look intellectual property, competition rules, anti-state subsidies. All these things have to be discussed with the Chinese, and they have to come to full maturity. At 14 trillion, you are no longer a poor neighbor. You are a pillar of the global economy. And so it's time for China to adopt and for us to adopt to China. And that's, of course, then leading to this trade conflict which we have with Trump and China, this whole insecurity for the global system. And that's, of course, shaking the global economy even before Corona very much in its fundamentals. And so we have to find a new arrangement with China, which includes openness and includes full membership of WTO, but also to come to a readjustment again with the Chinese participation in the global economy. Sorry. So now we come to the second big thing which has changed the global economy and has a big impact on FDI. That's, of course, the tax cuts of 2017. America had really for a very long term a very high tax rate for corporations, and that was of course leading to massive capital flight from the biggest economy of the world in offshore, trying to recycle and hide money from Ireland to Panama, and it was a mess. Yeah. Now comes this situation with the 21, and that has led to a massive repatriation of capital into the American economy, because first time there was a reasonable tax rate, and that was really drying up the FDI capital markets for the developing world, and was a big driver of change, and one of the reasons why we have so much less FDI already before the corona in the developing world, and we will discuss the answer for that, but this is of course a big impact factor. And the third factor obviously is started in 2013, if I maybe already a bit before, but it's a kind of a withdrawal of America from the world's problems. That was of course from the Second World War on, America the lead organizing and order power in the world, and from 2013 there was a massive kind of withdrawal of America from Afghanistan, Iraq, non-intervention, almost in Libya, and then leading the French and the UK to bungle that up, and then not going into Syria, and all the consequent crises in Ukraine, and a complete mess, because there is no global order power in that extent. It is there, of course, but it was not ready in that years to really assume this power, and this has led to a lot of additional instability. Yes, I have already made that point with Crimea, Syria, the migration crisis. It's all connected in this kind of pressure zone between European Union and Russia, in this gigantic arc from Tunisia, Libya to Belarus. We have this permanent area, this arc. Mr. Borrell, our foreign policy chief, has said, and this is basically an arc from Libya to via Syria to Belarus, and this is exactly a good combination, and that's of course shaking also the global economy at a very fragile time. And then we have obviously this corona financial debt crisis. I'm less talking about the public health situation here, but more about the economic and fiscal situation. Massive new debt for the public with the corona, and also a loss of demand and major shock for the corporate sector, and our response to that. And that are basically these four big drivers of change in the last 5 years for FDI, and how we will respond to that. And that's a big question for the coming year. So, as I said at IME, I'm absolutely an optimist for the 2020s, and it will be a very successful decade. Yeah? And then I made this small joke, I repeat it, that optimism is the duty of every intelligent human being. A quote not totally correct of Sir Karl Popper. He is the original quote. And I said, then you can doubt my intelligence, but I'm still optimistic for the 2020s. And I am. And there's many reasons why this is justified, and I will discuss them now. Market democracies are able to adapt to a crisis. We need a clear analysis, what are the reasons, and then we systematically need to address them one by one. And, we are able to do that. And I'm confident that we can do that. Yeah? We have a corona crisis. We counter it with vaccination and modern science. We have a fiscal crisis. Good, we will save and we will grow faster. We have a security crisis with Russia. Okay, we will confront Russia. We have an issue with China and the WTO. We will reorganize the world trading system. We can adopt, yeah? We can adopt our systems. Our systems are market democracies, and we have this institutional framework, and we, according to the demands, we change it and adopt it, yeah? It's fundamentally working, yeah? It's very, very sound system, and we will do basically what is needed in terms of more openness, in terms of more competitiveness, lower taxes, and more unity of the Western world, and also increase the trust in modern science, and then we will manage to prevail into this decade as well, and we will add another very successful decade in the 2020s following this crisis of 2020. The major reason why I'm so optimistic, I have outlined it here, because we have this amazing kind of wealth generation machine, which is the global economy. And especially since the end of the Cold War, this was a very decisive transition year, the year 1990. And we have now 30 years, one generation. And the world has added an astonishing 2.5 billion people and $65 trillion GDP output. I mean, these are really huge figures. I have the evidence here on the side. We started with 5.3 billion and now we are close to 8. Yeah? 2.5 billion, it's 50% more population in just one generation. Amazing progress. It's only possible because of peace, because of prosperity, because of the market economies we have, and the system really works. And people have now generated 22 billion in the year of the end of the Cold War, when the victory year, and then 30 years later it's now at 87. Yeah? You won't believe it. Yeah? It's really so significant, and you know, a 65 trillion more GDP. So if you are not optimistic, I have to doubt your intelligence. And really, to be very clear, these are really amazing, successful numbers. Everybody is an asset, a contributor, innovator, trying to achieve something. The more people, the better, and it's happening, and we are on a very good track. And it's this peace and the victory in the Cold War which made it possible, and really every reason for optimism. Good. Obviously, more people is also more challenges in many times in the economic system. So we have much progress, but we also have to discuss now what needs to be done to adopt our system towards this new decade and this crisis, and how we have to do it. Now it's very important to see the state of EU trade, because the EU trade, it's a similar map, exists also for America. So we are the two pillars of the West, but both of the leading Western powers, the US and the EU, have a similar system. And so we have to conclude more free trade agreements. Yeah? We have already as EU quite a lot. The blue is the deepest level of integration, green the second one with our EFTA friends. Then we have this dark red. This is already where we have an active FDI or free trade agreement with Japan. With now we have also the Vietnam one, that's a new ad, and the Singapore, it's just done. Then we have it with Canada, with the Andean countries, with South African nation. And we are ongoing with Mexico, that's very much advanced, with Chile, that's in the process. Mercosur is already done, but needs to be ratified. That's a big deal now. We have this battle coming up in the European Parliament and in member states. I have made a separate video on Mercosur on my YouTube channel. Africa, Mrs. van der Leyen now today in her State of the Union address has said that this will be one of the priorities. So we're looking forward for free trade with Africa, and also with the Gulf states, with Central Asia. There's a discussion with Kazakhstan going on, and with Uzbekistan, and obviously with the ASEAN countries, especially Indonesia, and with Australia and New Zealand. So much is going on. We need to be more open, and we will be more open, and this is really happening. And obviously also with our friends from America, this now in the crisis has led a little bit to a reduction of cocky arrogance, which we had a bit, some kind of attitudes here. And now the last months we have seen much progress with the US and the EU on agriculture and other issues. And hopefully by the next European elections 2024, we will have a free trade agreement with the Americas as well, and much progress is to be expected. I call this agenda the Open West. You know, that's basically all the institutions which we have, you know, from the WTO, OECD, OSCE. We have to adopt them a little bit, open them, make sure there is more countries included, EU enlargement, Euro enlargement, NATO enlargement, OECD enlargement, Council of Europe enlargement. Look, I have the whole list here for anybody to see. This is really very important. Our institutions work very well, and just allow more countries to join. It's quite logical, yeah? Why to exclude them? There's no reason for that, yeah? I have made one example especially about the Mercosur, because that's really very striking. We have this ratification debate now, hopefully, and I'm confident we will succeed successfully with this now in 2021, hopefully latest, to have the ratification done on both sides, but also to include them into the OECD. That's quite logical. Chile is already there, Colombia, Costa Rica. So get Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil into the OECD as well. They are fully good friends and partners. We have a free trade agreement, so let's get them into the OECD. That's a perfect way to also improve standards in all aspects. So that's a symbol what I want to say: free trade agreements and enlargement of the institutions. Also, because at IME there were a lot of friends from Africa, the free trade agreement with Africa, which I have also talked about in the conference. That's one of the priorities of the new Commission President. The meeting in the beginning of the year before Corona was very good, so let's get it done. Africa has this continental free trade agreement now in power and force. That's excellent, so let's get a joint one between the EU and the African Union done. And it will be very, very beneficial for both sides. So that's about openness and trade. Now come back to the tax question, because that's of course our response the world has to make. You have to see which tax level is the right one. Where are high tax countries still left? Like in France, that's unsustainable. But many countries in Africa have really not changed. You see the green countries have changed, lowered the tax level. Some countries have increased, like Chile and Papua New Guinea, to my complete confusion, but some countries have not changed at all because they were not so much ready for economic change, I think, or had other crises and civil wars, or Venezuela disaster, or Syria. But most reasonable countries in the free world have reduced their corporation tax in the last 20 years significantly. And I study the success of the Eastern European transformation countries. Post-socialist transformation country is the best to go for 10%. Yeah? Uzbekistan, in my favorite, 7.5. You can go on variations, but I think 10% is a fair deal. 10% corporation tax in all Africa, America, and South America, Central America, Asia, and that's the tax level for faster growth, for competitiveness, and to catch up. NATO, of course, very important. We have NATO enlargement in Eastern Europe very successfully. Now it's 30 countries. NATO is obviously the backbone of global security. It's the most powerful alliance there is, and it's one not to be attacked, because it has these immense capacities, this $1 trillion yearly budget in defense, and also all the capacities behind it. And so obviously it has this kind of stability effect on the whole world. And this is very important to build up partnerships, and we will have more countries in Europe to join. I'm very much advocating for the 6 neutrals to join, but also Ukraine and other countries to join. And so we will be probably going into the direction of 42 countries in NATO. That's for the full membership. But NATO has also 42, and so you see the development of the membership. But NATO has also, together with the US, this non-NATO alliance, the global partnership, which is here on the lower part of the slide, and the other side is the US partnership, non-NATO alliance. And we should match it a bit, and we should also really make a global alliance, not as strong maybe with Article 5 mutual defense guarantee, but with cooperation on technical standards, with military training together and exercises, and to make sure any kind of hostile power like Russia or Iran, and let's see what China will be acting in the future, there is basically this kind of stability provided by NATO. That's very important for the world. So when it comes to the challenge of aggressive Russia, that's one side is NATO, but it's also economically. We will massively now reduce the energy dependencies of Europe by basically producing much more renewable energy. The Germans have tremendous success with that, but also the Austrians. Sorry. and everybody basically going significantly down with carbon. And the carbon, the big enemy, is not only for the climate and for the green world, but basically because most of the carbon Europe consumes is from Russia, and we will reduce that significantly. Sorry, that's bad for that's very good for our trade balance. That's very good for our strategic position towards Russia, and that's very good for Russia to have less funding for this kind of activities which Russia is doing since 2014. So basically, we are responding. You know, we are not so fast as many would wish, even I, but we are responding, and you will see the consequence of our strategic actions in weakening the Russian capacity to harm us by buying much less Russian carbon, nuclear, coal, all these products which Russia is currently using to sell to us to fund the aggression in Ukraine, Syria, Libya. That won't be the case at the end of the 2020s, be totally sure about it. So when it comes to unity, that's obviously not easy. You know, we are a complicated continent, as everybody is. We didn't unify in the start like the Americans, but we are gradually unifying. And we have already these 100 million Europeans in the EU. We have 70 more to come. And we also unify them monetary-wise. Yeah? And this is the slide for the progress of Bulgaria and Romania, and Croatia in the second step towards the euro, the monetary exchange mechanism, IME. And now we are heading then for more progress. I hope also that Romania will join very fast. And then we discuss with other countries like Poland, which is of course a bit of a a problem that they have not joined. But I'm confident there will be. And the message is, we are working on it. We are responsible actors in the European Union. We enlarge our systems. We stabilize Eastern Europe. The progress is quite considerable, amazing, and we will do more on it. Especially Ukraine crisis, of course, that's also in our relation with Russia very important. They have occupied two parts of Ukraine, the Crimea and the Donbass. Please liberate them, please, because that was illegal. And we will never recognize it. But also now 40 million Ukrainians are very much on the way to the European Union. And that, of course, is also a very significant change towards more unity. And so Ukraine and the other countries, we will now enter a third wave of enlargement of after the post-Cold War. That will bring another 70 million people towards the European Union. And that will be obviously a big step forward for economic prosperity in Europe. I have a little bit, this gentleman is actually the founder, one of the founders of the European Union, the driver, Jean Monnet. And basically we have to achieve continental union in Europe. That's the answer for this current challenge by Russia. And economically, more unity. We are now, the Americans are at $62,000 per capita, and we are just at 36. Yeah? Obviously, we took 100 million new Europeans into, mostly poor. But also the Americans have integrated 80 million new people. They have now, the population growth in America is tremendously bigger than in Europe. So, but we are still much behind. So we simply have a lot of internal transaction costs because our internal market is still stuttering, not completed. We still have half of Europe not in the EU, basically. And we have now this Brexit crisis. So, we are not perfect. In no way. We have to do much more. But we will. Watch us being more unified. Now with the UK gone, actually, it will allow us even faster unification because that's the will of most of the member states, and the UK was never ready for that so much. So you will see we will be really going much more into American-style continental union, and that will have a big impact. Yeah? I call it the lost $12 trillion question because that's about the output level which we miss towards America when we would be on the American prosperity level. More unity and continental unification will give us this $12 trillion additional output, and watch the Europeans be competing with the Americans much more and catching up gradually over the next decade. Europeans call for lower taxes. I made the case. More openness on trade. That I made the case, but also for people, and more unity. And so gradually to see that we are no longer so much behind, because when you see the difference between America and the United States of America and Europe, it's still very significant, and that needs really to change, and we will definitely catch up. One of the central banks. Coming back now, and that's for the whole decade, and coming back to the current crisis, that's the fourth big challenge we have, obviously, now. Hit us very hard, obviously, but also I would like to reiterate that modern science, innovation and technology, that's the product of a market economy, is ready to respond to such challenges because we have the science capacity, we have the academic and innovation and industrial capacity to respond effectively to this. Yeah? And when you looked at the first American big pharma company, this Moderna, had on the 16th of March, that's about 2 months after the DNA was put online by the Chinese, they have responded with a working vaccine which is now under testing, must be tested. It takes a long time, but must be carefully handled before it's given to the public because it's a big responsibility. Ultimately, it's not a risk because this is working already. Yeah? Otherwise, they would not have put it in the testing. You know, you don't put kind of experiments into testing. Yeah? And this is exactly what is there. And, you know, this is amazing, this fast progress of modern technology science which we have, not just on the iPhone, which everybody knows, but also in the more complicated bioscience. Yeah? And now we come into a dimension where modern technology, the digitalization and the biotechnology are merging more and more. And this is really wonderful progress, and it will be very, very good. And be sure about it, we will also grow with our modern science capacities in the next decade, responding also to other challenges. And when it comes institutionally, now fiscally to everything, you know, it is quite impressive when you see that the capacities of the European Union to respond. That's basically the whole European states and the EU have together mobilized no less than 4.2 trillion. It's quite enormous. The Americans have mobilized even more, the Chinese certainly also some trillions, I don't know very well. But, you know, that is basically another proof that you have to be part of a bigger continental union in this crisis because the mobilization potential of one big economic political union is simply so big. Yeah? I mean, which small country can do that? Yeah. And so we can really grow ourselves, somehow keep ourselves strong into this crisis. And obviously then I advocate very much for lower taxes, you know, because we need to grow faster out of it. But that will be a battle. Some people will say, let's have higher taxes, but that will be, of course, very wrong. But what I was saying with this slide, the European Union has lived up to its to the challenge of the corona crisis, responded quite positively and is able to do it. Yeah? So a lot of reasons for optimism. Coming back to the IME discussion, which we then had about Kosovo, because that's also a reason for amazing optimism, because just 20 years ago it was liberated by NATO in the 99 Kosovo war, when the Serbs tried to ethnically clean and remove all the Albanians from their own territory in a terror campaign. That was, of course, a terrible crime, and the NATO intervened and liberated Kosovo. And these 2 million people are now living first under international administration, and now with the support of the Western world and many others, thanks a lot, they have in 2008 declared independence, and they are now really very successful. Euroized, 10%, they do everything right. Modern infrastructure, you know, all these wonderful things. And also the German government has taken its former military camp, now transformed into business and industrial park, and that's available for international investors now. And this was presented very successfully by the team from the Brisbane International Innovation and Training Park. And this is really how it should be. Within 20 years to go to such a level is quite impressive. And there you can invest now because you are basically, of course, you know, in small transition countries, you always have issues with land access and with corruption. But in such an industrial park, which is basically managed by a German entity, you don't have to deal with all that. You can just produce under this very good, secure euro and low tax conditions with full market access to the EU. And you can have a good logistic cooperation towards the sea in Albania and Durrës. And then basically that's a really good recommendation. And thanks for IME to have this presentation, and I was honored to be the moderator of that beautiful activity. I was especially honored also to meet the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti, at this event. He had the keynote speech. That was really very good, and he was highlighting all the success of the 20 years of Kosovo after the war. He is, of course, promising much more progress, and we hope that there will be, because a lot of things still need to be done. But the euro and 10% flat tax is, of course, a major thing, and that was really very good to have this opportunity also to chat and to listen to the speech of the Prime Minister. And by the way, it was a very historic moment, because just before was this White House agreement with Serbia and the United States, and the recognition of Israel. And if you have still not recognized Kosovo, please, it's a very, very good idea for peace, because peace is a precondition for prosperity. And we have now really 20 years of stability already in the Balkans, but now it's time for peace, and this will open the way for even new levels of prosperity. But don't forget, Kosovo, with the right economic tools of the euro and low taxation, has already overcome Ukraine, Moldova, and is close to Georgia on the same GDP level, 4,700. It's just half the global average. I know Brazil is richer and other countries are richer, but for the condition where we have been in '99 with war, destruction, and the lack of investment forever, basically, because there was just a little period after World War II in the 50s to 65 where there was really some more or less normal investment in energy and infrastructure, but basically Kosovo never got a lot of that, and the rest was then in the 70s and the 80s defunct. And so what the international community encountered in 1990 was a big disaster, and basically everything had to be built from the scratch. And that was done, and now it's a good success. So we can be really very proud and happy for this progress. So I would like now to close my video and say thanks for Bekim Jaffer for this invitation, and thanks for this great event now after Corona, or during Corona. It was actually very courageous to do it, and it was great networking, many nice people. I was happy to be at IME 2020. Hope to see you at IME 21, and stay optimist and stay in touch. And these are my Twitter handles and LinkedIn and Facebook thing. And I hope that we will be in touch and hope to see you. And please think always, stay optimist and lower the tax rates, and make sure you have a hard currency policy and be open to the world. That's very important. Be part of the Western institutional framework from OECD, free trade agreements, and all other possibilities wherever you are based in the world, and make sure your economy is competitive based on a firm fundament, and make sure that you do decent economics and treat your foreign indirect investors as it would be your own capital, please. Yeah? Then they will come, they will talk with each other, and they will understand. And where there is success, there will be more investments. And where there is abuse, there will be less. Yeah? So basically, treat your foreign direct investors like your own capital and your own money, basically. Then you will be very successful with attracting new investments. Thanks a lot, and keep in touch. All the best. Bye.